Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. So, Russia is threatening a nuclear attack. And they even claim to have justification according to their state-owned TV. Actually, it's Belarusian state-owned TV, which is closely allied with Russia. According to the Belarusians, the White Russians, the Polish Prime Minister said it would be justified for NATO to supply nukes to the Ukraine. Really? Now, I don't personally have much of an opinion of the Polish Prime Minister, but I find it's interesting that the only source for this video is on Belarusian TV, and it's made by a nation that does not have any extant nuclear arsenal, at least as far as we know. This threat is an interesting threat. You see, traditionally Russia and the Soviet Union before it were anti-nuclear weapons. They had more than everybody else because they felt threatened, and justifiably so. The United States has never been afraid to rattle a saber in its entire existence. But the Russians have a natural phenomena that works against them having any interest to nuke anybody in Europe. You see, just like the jet stream, which flows from west to east, allows our airliners to travel a little bit faster to Europe than it does allow them coming back. But it would also do that with any fallout. And the Russians had done extensive studies on this through the 60s and the 70s and perhaps even the 80s. They were still crunching the numbers. So for Russia to get away with a bolt from the blue attack in some weird Wild West scenario, it's going to be a matter of hours before Moscow and pretty much everything in eastern Russia and parts of western Russia are affected by fallout. It's literally suicide for Russia to launch an attack on Europe. But that's what is being threatened at the moment. Now, they've threatened it before. But when the Russians and the Soviets were a little more level-headed, a little less inclined to make threats, they're interested in world building. They were the ones that wanted to sign a treaty with the United States that said neither nation would take a first strike option. In other words, neither one would use nukes first. Very sensible option. The United States refused to sign it, which is a shame, although treaties these days seem to be written on pieces of paper. I mean, Ukraine in 1994 signed a treaty that it gave its nuclear weapons back to Russia in exchange for Russia not invading its territory. Well, that treaty is obviously out the window. Indeed, the whole non-proliferation treaty at the moment seems like a joke, given the nations that we know about: the United States, Russia, China, India, Pakistan, and the three suspected nations, Israel, North Korea, and Iran. The whole non-proliferation treaty just seems silly and unenforceable. The funny part is, not long ago, we were all working together. Remember in the 1990s, and the Russians were inviting United States inspectors in to look at their arsenal and make sure it was all taken care of? Well, that's out the window. Just this year, the United States spent $66 billion. That's right, $66 billion just maintaining its current nuclear arsenal. In 2016, they spent $1 trillion revamping the manufacturing facilities. That's right. They dumped $1 trillion into Ohio and Illinois and all those wonderful places just to keep those facilities modern and up to date. Now, the United States is not alone on this. China has historically in my opinion, taken the best approach, which is have just enough nuclear bombs to make your opponent flinch and say, we don't want to attack them. China's changing away from that policy. They haven't matched Russia or the United States yet, but with their production capacity, it is fully possible they could. And the question is, how many other nations out there have nuclear bombs? South America had nuclear bombs for years. And just suddenly in 1990, when apartheid ended and de Klerk stepped down, magically this, oh yeah, we got these nuclear bombs and we'd like to get rid of them now. There's an old theory that makes a hell of a lot of sense. It was basically in the 1950s and the 1960s. Germany and Israel wanted nuclear weapons. Israel because of its position, Germany because they had the United States and Russia fighting over them, and it's not fun to be the lightweight at the table. And South America had uranium and a whole lot of space to test nuclear weapons, which is something neither Israel nor Germany could. And let's be honest, at that point, nobody really cared about South Africa. The people there were sadly irrelevant to world affairs. It didn't happen until the 70s and the 80s when people started saying, apartheid's horrible, who came up with this crap, and kicked those people out. But supposedly it was German and Israeli engineers and South Africa providing labor and space that made those nuclear bombs that are not admitted to this day. So even supposedly friendly Germany might have a few bombs tucked away for a rainy day, as in a rainy day where it rains nuclear weapons on top of people's heads. The ramifications of that are staggering. Pakistan was pleased to announce that it was the first Muslim nuclear nation. And indeed, some of their engineers have been caught in relatively faraway places looking to arm the local people. And I'm being very vague in the terms because the Muslim world is just as fractured as the rest of the world, and there's family dynamics, tribal dynamics, power dynamics that it would take hours to even begin to break down. And that's why I'm not pointing to anybody, because I don't have much solid evidence aside from the fact that, Pakistan admitted that they were helping the Muslim world develop nuclear weapons. Doubtless that's where Iran got some of its expertise. Pakistan and Iran have this weird love-hate relationship. They're not enemies, they're not friends, they're kind of frenemies. Personally, I've never understood why Pakistan was considered an ally. I mean, yes, India allied with the Soviets and Pakistan allied with us, but in terms of terrorism, and we're going back to the 1980s when, terrorists would hijack a plane and either fly it to Libya or a country like that, or, demand lots of money or blow the thing up with a bomb. We're not talking modern 9/11 style terrorism. But it always existed. It just got reimagined. And that's what the worry is. Yes, even a basic nuclear bomb is a heavy device, but there's tons of 747s that you can modify, arrange and plane manifest for, etc. And I mean, a gun-style nuclear bomb, well, atomic bomb, something like Little Boy that they dropped on Hiroshima, doesn't require a lot of engineering to do. It requires the materials and refining them, which is where the real trick is. But the basics have been understood for 80 years now. The more productive plutonium bomb, which is what most of the arsenals in the world use as their basis today, which was the Fat Man bomb dropped on Nagasaki, that's a lot harder to engineer because it involves explosives, lensing their power to compress the plutonium and force it to split. I understand it, but yeah, simple gun device where one half of plutonium, one half of uranium smashes into the other half is way, way easier and more practical to produce. The trick is the refining part. Now, I've been watching some documentaries on India and Pakistan and their levels of technology, and believe me, they're no slouches. But the same token, they still have people mining salt with gunpowder. That's right, gunpowder. Notice I didn't say dynamite. Notice I didn't say any form of modern explosive. This is gunpowder. Now, to their credit, from what I saw of the gentleman in Pakistan mining salt, he was following proper procedures. They evacuated the tunnel. He was calling out 3 times, we're about to blast, we're about to, whatever the heck he was saying. I knew what the subtitles said, but I don't think he said that. I think it was a heck of a lot more formal than what they were letting it on to be. Everyone move to the side. No, I think it was everybody get out of this place because we're about to blow. But that's the problem with subtitles, you're never sure. But they're doing that with salt. By the way, Himalayan sea salt, comes from Pakistan. There's something I should explore one day after watching a couple of videos, because basically it comes from Pakistan. It used to go to India. Actually, first it went to Britain, where they sold it at a huge profit. Then it went to India, where they sold it at a huge profit. And now Pakistan has finally repatriated it, which is kind of a victory for them. I just wish they would use something safer than a gunpowder charge. Like, geez, it's only salt, but I'm worried about worker safety, and I'm sure there's way better ways to do it. Salt is worth $4 to $10 per ton. Per ton. It's not worth risking people's lives over, and yet we do it every single day. So think about that next time you buy your hipster Himalayan sea salt. It's not Himalayan. It doesn't come from the sea. It's mined underground. Although compared to the way that the Indian people, well, it's one tribe of the Indian people mine their salt, which is they have to get water, it's brackish water, and put it in ponds, wait for months, and they have to ground it out by hand, and that's worse. Point of this is at the same time, India is producing its own fighter jet. Pakistan is acquiring incredibly advanced weapon systems. They're both nuclear armed, and they both don't like each other. They have fought multiple wars over Pashtun and that area, and there's still outstanding grudges between them. The India and Pakistan front is the one that is the least talked about in the world. And as I documented a few days ago, the fact that India is suddenly cozying up to the West to get better weapons, partially because of the way that the Russian weapons are performing in the Ukraine, and partially because the West still has so much untapped potential. Remember that a lot of the factories in the United States and Canada and Europe were built with the idea that they could be converted over to military facilities fairly quickly. And that's why in World War II, the United States went from producing, Ford Jeeps to, fighters and bombers, because that's what those factories are designed for. The warning about the military-industrial complex still holds true to this day. And unfortunately, I don't see it going away, because the only thing that this accomplishes is it gets countries to spend more money on weapons. Individuals don't spend money on weapons. Look at Elon Musk. While he and the Russian oligarchs, who are dropping like flies, like I said yesterday, they have security forces that would make Doom Guy look, badly armed. Their boats have surface-to-air missiles on them. Like these people are incredibly well armed, but compared to what we see in like James Bond, where you have a private army with a private air force and stuff, that doesn't seem to exist in the modern world. Admittedly, Elon Musk has his private space force, as do a couple other billionaires, but we don't get, like in James Bond Moonraker, where the guy has a militarized fleet and, he's ready to take over the world by launching spores into the atmosphere. Though that may change. And perhaps that's why this military buildup is happening now, because Elon Musk is getting ready to launch his Starship. the elites suddenly have a way off this planet other than going down into the bunkers and living at a bunker existence. Billionaires don't like to do that. Billionaires like to tour the world and have people worship them at the ground. So imagine what happens when Elon Musk takes over Mars and becomes basically the sole source of authority over there. Instant new monarchy. Pretty good for a guy from South Africa during a period of apartheid when they didn't admit they had nuclear weapons. Oh yeah, same guy. Anyways, we're getting a lot of saber rattling. And I know yesterday I said, use your fear, but use your mind. And I stick by that philosophy. But the important thing to remember is a little preparedness never hurts. Doesn't cost that much either. Pick up a little bit, pick up an extra bag of rice. They keep forever. And then use the extra one you picked up next time. So that way you're always living a year behind on your prices. Costs nothing to have a couple cases of water in the basement. And believe me, it can be highly useful. We've all had power outages, everything's happened, and I have a feeling they're going to get more frequent in nature. The way they're talking about shutting down the coal-fired stations and making a carbon neutral footprint, that's fantastic. I like that. But I don't see anything coming online to replace it. Yes, a Tesla is cool, a Prius is cool. You know, these little hybrids running around, great. Where are we going to plug them in? So I'm kind of seeing that as the next crisis, but not for another. Again, we have to get through the next 12 to 36 months where we're going to find out exactly what happens financially with people. And then we can start worrying about their long-term plan. It won't be long. We do have a short time to prepare. I suggest you use it. Beans, rice, they keep virtually forever. They don't need freezing. They're all dried. There's more nutritious things and tastier things than beans and rice, but remember, you can also store some garlic powder, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. So you're not going to live like a champion, but same token, you're going to live. It's going to be an interesting couple of years. When we talk in 2025, don't worry, we'll talk many times before that. We'll have it all figured out. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please hit like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to buy one of the books listed in the comments down below. And we hope you have a fantastic day.